Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Rostermania kicked into a new gear last night. So many free agents to discuss. Toronto Ultra indicating their intent with regard to Cammy. Florida building around DavePaDy potentially. And also Shotzzy and aBeZy are technically now free agents, although OpTic would be expected to re-sign them. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Really upset the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Loads of new subs the last couple of days. Really appreciate it, as you might, in fairness, expect with all the stuff that's been going on. First of all, like, we've got to touch briefly on this New York Subliners shambles that's been happening the last 48 hours or so. This is what was interesting from Crim. He asked me to change the thumbnail around. Funny to me that he was wondering, he wasn't happy about the wording at the bottom of the thumbnail initially. He wanted that changed, but he didn't seem to have a problem with what was in the top right of the thumbnail. But look, as he says, I thought it was kind of interesting, nor did I truly want to, he says. So indicating he didn't really want to stay on the Subliners anyway. And then also goes on to say that he thinks the entire team, including himself, deserve to get dropped for their performances, deserve to get canned except for Kismet and JP, right? So JP, their analyst, he reckons that everyone, Drill, Revan, of course we'll see that here in a second, and the entirety of the rest of the team, Paulex, Hydra, and everyone else deserve to go, with the exception of Kismet and JP, two of the guys arguably that look the best out of this. Now, speaking of JP, unrestricted free agent, right? So his contract is expiring with the New York Subliners as their analyst. He's going to be gone. Now, look, JP's been known as one of the top stats guys for a number of years and analysts in the scene, so I think he'll walk into another role no problem at all. But it's interesting they're getting rid of him, right? Because it does seem like New York, and we'll see this later today, that they've just gone all in on the Hydra situation, right? And they're saying, well, look, we're going to get Hydra, we're going to blow it up elsewhere, make sure there's no dramas, and make sure the team gets on, theoretically. And maybe that's going to be a better team environment, right? But get rid of everyone that was causing any sort of problem. I don't even think JP was particularly involved, but yeah, he is an option for elsewhere, and even Crim says hire this man. People were mentioning actually that OpTic might consider his services because they don't really have a pure analyst really on their team. They've got Sender, they've got Rambo, maybe more traditional coaches, and of course Rambo does some man management stuff, but having an analyst there as well would be interesting. Of course, you look at Toronto, you look at of course FaZe, they've got 3 members of the coaching staff, right? A head coach, an assistant coach, and an analyst. OpTic might consider something similar. So even Roddy kind of says here on the Scrimmage account, and then Ben Genesis says, yeah, sometimes you spit BS on this, but you're 100% right on this one, right? They should indeed sign him. Now Revan is also gone. There was drama, loads of drama behind the scenes, obviously, between Revan, JP, Darrell, whatever. They've decided, look, they're going to stick by Darrell. Obviously, Darrell wasn't perfect this season. He made his fair share of mistakes. Revan is, not exactly unaccountable either because of everything that's going on there behind the scenes. So New York have decided, yes, look, we're going to make these coaching changes. All the drama that was happening with Darrell against the other guys, we're just going to stop that right now and let Revan go. So he's looking for opportunities as well. So yes, the entire New York Subliners camp is being gutted, it seems, and we'll see that's more in just a second. Now, also on the Paris Legion side, unfortunately for Dottie, Temp, we'll see this in a second, but everyone else, John, Jimbo, Johnny, all those guys are restricted or unrestricted free agents, so they didn't extend their contracts, whereas Temp, they did extend his contract, as honestly could have been predictable, but it's still kind of sad to think about, really. We'll see that here in a second, but plenty else going on before we get to that point. Let's talk about the Florida camp then. So Major Maniac, he's had a difficult time because he was on the Minnesota Rocker, gets benched, of course, from that team, finds himself then on the Florida Mutineers, has decent, well, at least he performs pretty well. Their Search and Destroy got better, stuff like that, but he's an unrestricted free agent, not going to build around him at all, and I'm not really sure what Florida's plan here actually is, because a lot of their big players are just now gone effectively from the team, and we'll see that in a second here, because as Sky says, unrestricted free agent for 2023, excited for a new chapter. So we were wondering, yes, both Skies and Big Wake are free agents, unrestricted, because their 1+1s are now at an end. There's nothing Florida can do to keep them unless they offer them a massive bag. They can't force them to stay by extending their contract type situation, of course they could if they were only at the end of their 1-year deal with a 1+1 to follow on, which is where these team extension options come in. We'll see that here in a second. But yeah, Skies and Wake at the end of their deals, we were wondering, okay, would one of them stay? Would both of them stay? I thought for sure both of them won't stay. Maybe both of them will leave, because Skies is excited for a new chapter. It sounds to me like he wants to go elsewhere. Of course, we heard the New York potential rumors. We'll discuss that later today. And even Awakening says, I can do it all, I just want to win, right? People said SMG or AR, and as he kind of says right here, unrestricted free agent. So I think he probably wants to go elsewhere. He might end up staying on Florida depending on the team that they build, but they have announced that this is the situation with Florida. So Two Real, Skies, Yeez, Awakening, and Major Maniac are all unrestricted free agents. So Skies and Awakening, they were at the end of their 1+1s anyway. Two Real, Yeez, and Major Maniac, they've decided not to extend the options of, so they're all free. Now, of course, the name that's missing here is none other than DavePaDy. Of course, that was the AR player on this team earlier this season. I did even mention the other day, I think, that I do think there is a player there in DavePaDy, but we didn't really see the best of him extracted from this Florida team and the playstyle that he has. Like, and that's the thing. DavePaDy is still on this roster, and it has been confirmed by the team themselves. I think even if we go to their Twitter right here, we'll probably see this, this clip they point out here from Zuma stream, where he's talking about the fact that, yeah, DavePaDy's been extended, and Mutineers actually tweet this out themselves. So yes, DavePaDy is there. And also, like, okay, the idea might be what Paul X is the situation there with New York, where New York have extended Paul X. They don't really want to keep Paul, but they've just extended him because they can have him on their sub bench, right, if they don't get a better offer to sell him on elsewhere. But Paul X is a player that can run a flex, he can run maybe an SMG if necessary, stuff like this. DavePaDy's pretty much a pure out AR player, so he's not really going to be the best substitute player, right? It's kind of the general OpTic situation that we talked about yesterday. They, of course, released general. So, having DavePaDy here doesn't really make sense to keep him on as a sub. So, to me, it sounds like they're actually going to plan to build around him, right? Which is an interesting choice if that is Mutineer's plan indeed, and they're going to take DavePaDy as their kind of main AR figure, especially because Skies and Awakening, the two most talented players on the team, are now going. It makes it a tough time for me to believe that Mutineers are really going to build a competitive squad here. There are some SMGs they're looking at, of course. There's been some rumors going around that Exceed is one of them from the Challenger side, so we'll see if any of that comes to fruition. But let's talk about the Toronto stuff then, because a lot has been happening. Restricted free agent from Cammy. We saw the confirmation from Bance, right, that he was going to be an unrestricted free agent, and Cammy is a restricted free agent, right? So what this means is that Ultra have extended his deal, but not with the intention to keep him, because if there's a player that isn't so valuable, you don't think there's a great trade opportunity for on the market, you might just release them as unrestricted and have them off your books. However, if there's a guy like Cammy who's going to get offers all over the league, Toronto are effectively in a better financial position if they extend Cammy's deal and then sell him rather than just let him go for free. So that's the situation with Cammy. It's not really going to affect Cammy's career here because he's going to get offers flying in left, right and centre. I'm sure he's going to have some good opportunities out there. But yes, officially, that is the change that Toronto are making. Even as Hangy says here, Cammy's going to be a very interesting moving piece this offseason. There's many teams that would probably improve from having a MVP caliber player that he has been, let's say Cold War, and even like Modern Warfare briefly, he was incredibly good indeed. Started this year off not particularly well in Vanguard, ended it a little bit better than he started it, but still wasn't that good this season. But I do think he's still got that dog in him, I suppose, to deliver the goods on a different team. Now, of course, what this does mean is that Toronto are pretty much indicating their intention to bring Scrappy in. Insight, Scrappy, Hixie, and CleanX are the 4 guys now contracted. They have even more contractors as well, and this is kind of where Toronto have done a great job in kind of reaping the benefits of their academy system. They've had the European Academy, they've had the NA Academy, and now they can pick the best out of those teams in Scrappy and Hixie, both on the NA Academy, but they've got Beans as well on their bench now and other players like that in a similar boat that they can now bring up to their starting team. So yes, I'm not actually sure I like this roster, and this may not be the roster they go with because they're probably thinking, look, can we maybe get a better SMG? Can we get an Afro? Can we even get a Hydra? Which seems unlikely, but I'm sure Toronto are maybe asking around. But yes, probably the AR line will be Inside and Scrappy, it does seem. And where will Cammy go is a big question as well, because he's definitely a big name player in the market. He could go to an LAG, he could go to potentially a New York, a Boston. Even I know some people have said that, well, we talked about the fact that Illy, is he actually going to be playing? Is his thumb injury recurring? Could he be the man that goes to the bench? Because OpTic cleaned out their bench as we looked at yesterday, right? Is, Cammy to OpTic an idea as their flex player? I don't really like it just because I'm not really sure where the leadership comes from there, but, still, it's something that at least you might want to consider because this Rostermania has been crazy enough already. Now, well, Alex Rubens from the Gar, this Los Angeles Grillers, he confirms that I thought was very interesting that they've taken the options of every player with the exception of Gunless. This is kind of strange because you'd have thought that Gunless, if you wanted to do a Cammy thing where you sell on Cammy, Gunless could be a good player to sell on. Like, I'm sure another team would want to bring him in, you would think at least. But they've let Gunless go as a free agent and everyone else unrestricted, and everyone else they've extended their deals. So does this mean they want all these guys to be on their roster next year, or does it mean that they want to maybe build around a few of these guys, aren't really sure what direction they want to go in, and probably can still sell a couple of them on? Ricky also is no longer going to be the head coach, he's now going to be a team manager, so I guess they're looking for another coach over there. We'll see how that goes. Now let's talk about what these teams are looking like. So it was leaked to Crone, or there was something came along with effectively looking at what all the extensions actually are, as of course, like all the Los Angeles, these guys, their extensions have come through, even though Octane was trying to deny Eric Sarders, that being Modog, from doing exactly that. I just wanted to mention this because I thought I'd tweet this out just so I could mention it in the video. For those of you guys who are kind of newer to these Rostermania periods, as I said, with the Cammy situation, just because they extended the option doesn't necessarily mean they want to keep that player on. They might just have better upside if they sell them rather than letting them walk away. The Cammy situation, possibly the LAG situation, and of course on the other side of things, if a player's a free agent, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to leave, especially if their 1+1 deal is now at an end. But they could well want to leave. If they're tweeting out unrestricted free agents looking for opportunities, like they probably do want to leave. That's the case with Skies and Awakening, whereas with Shotzzy and Illy, of course, that's not the case because they want to stay on OpTic. So bit of nuance required here, but thought I'd mention that at least because I know some people have seen that, okay, wow, that player extended, that means they will be staying. Not necessarily the case. It is the case, of course, for Atlanta FaZe, but Prestinni is a free agent apparently, so he could go elsewhere if he wants to. That might bring another sub on there. This is very interesting with regard to the Boston breach. Nero, Vivid, option extended, as you might expect. Capsidal, TJ free agents, and Methodz has a game launch extension. This is an element of the contract law, I guess, in the CDL, which to me is kind of questionable in terms of, well, for the benefit of the players. It doesn't seem like it is at all. This indicates to me that Boston are far from convinced they want to keep Methodz, right? We've talked about, okay, could Cammy come here as the flex? Even Gunless, could he be a flex option for this team? And maybe Methodz stays as the main AR. But they don't seem convinced based on this. They want to keep Methodz next year. They want to try him out maybe for a couple of weeks at the start of the game. And then if they can't upgrade their AR, they will do exactly that. So obviously, Zinni's got to be frying as soon as this game drops, because this is the game launch extension. This, of course, is relevant also for Modern Warfare 2. But effectively, the way this works is the game launches and they can extend the player to 2 weeks after the game's launch. If they don't want that player after 2 weeks of the game being in effect, effectively they can just see, okay, is this guy any good at this game? Kind of. Then they can drop them after 2 weeks after the game's launch. This obviously puts the players on this game launch extension in a really difficult spot, because what it means is if you get dropped 2 weeks after the game's launch, if you're Methodz and you get dropped for Clay or something, I don't know, 2 weeks after the game launches, and now all the other teams have stuck and they have no game launch extension options where you could potentially trade with one of those teams, therefore you're just stuck with no offers because all the teams have stuck and there's no options left over. So it's really tough for those guys, and I think as Crone says, the intention was to see how it played out on a new game. Highly doubt that's what teams will be using it for though, and as Brett Diamond says from Minnesota, we never used it, but yes, that was the intention. So saying it's kind of like a questionable thing to do from the org standpoint, but it is an option here, even though the players that get caught out by this may be getting seriously screwed over. So Zinni has got to be careful because they kind of want to build around him, but at the same time, like they're not indicating their intention at all to do exactly that, saying with this game launch extension that they can potentially get rid of him at any time and are potentially looking for an AR upgrade and aren't convinced that Methodz is going to be their guy. So that's one to keep your eyes on. Seattle Surge, they've all extended outside of Classic, of course, who's a free agent. London as well is interesting because apparently they weren't on the list that Chrome was given, but they are all free agents, I think we believe, based on the contract stuff over there. I think most of them will want to re-sign. Will Afro get better offers? I probably think he will. Will he decide to leave London though and go to one of those better offers? That's a question on him, I suppose, to actually have to answer. But that's one to keep your eyes on as well. There's plenty to keep your eyes on. This is the New York stuff. Kismet and Porlex option extended. As we saw, I think Porlex even clarified this was a game launch, right? So he's on a similar situation where they've extended him until 2 weeks after the game launches, and at that point they can either extend him for the rest of the year or they can drop him and pick him another substitute potentially if they want to. So it's an interesting one. The teams have this opportunity. We've seen recently the fact that these 3-year deals are now possible from this year onwards, which should be good for the security of the players, but this game launch stuff only seems to benefit the organization. Now, well, this also from Crone at Temp, unfortunately, his option has been extended. The other guys are free agents. Now, of course, look, Temp could be getting extended just because Paris want to sell him to another team for a good amount of money, right? Because Temp could get bought out here. If another organization wants Temp, they could come in and pay Paris a bit of money for his buyouts and get that deal done. And Paris probably think there's better upside for that because these other guys aren't going to get bought out, so might as well just let them go as unrestricted free agents. Intelligent from a business side does mean we might well see Vegas Temp next season once again, because apparently they actually have more funding this season, even though how unlikely that does seem. This is the OpTic side. Dashy and Scump, their options have been extended. Illy and Shotzzy, of course, they're free agents because their 1+1s are at an end. Prolute in general, also free agents. That's the thing. We expect Illy, Shotzzy to re-sign, but they are technically free agents based on the way their contract has come to an end. So other teams, like, look, other teams probably will knock on the door and say, look, Shotzzy, how much money do we have to pay you to come to Toronto or something? And maybe he'll give an answer. He more than likely won't. Los Angeles Gulas to me is a very interesting one, right? Because all of their players, with the exception of Gunless, who's of course a free, unrestricted free agent we looked at last night, their option got extended. So which of these players do they want to build around? Are they going to just run it back with these 5 players and have Spart on the bench, or like have someone else on the bench, Neptune or Asim on the bench? Or do they think, well, look, we don't really know what we want to do at this point. Let's extend these guys and then try and sell on the ones that we don't want. But is there that much of a market for some of these players out there on the kind of, free agency pool that might get bought out, with so many unrestricted free agents out there that are easier to acquire? Maybe not. This might be a questionable decision from LIG. I'm surprised they extended everyone, but I still feel like this team's got to make some sort of changes from the roster that they fielded at the end of last season. So we'll see what they decide to do going forwards. This is Ultras as well. So yes, Scrappy, Hixie, apparently they're also on the game launch extension as with Cammy. But of course, what that does mean, right, is that you can go 2 weeks after launch and then just say, okay, we want to keep them, right, and keep them until the end of the season. So it's kind of like a free pass for these teams. Unless they are absolutely certain they want to keep them on for an extra year, you might as well just do the game launch and extend them anyway at that time. CleanX are inside, Bance is a free agent, Cammy restricted, but under the game launch thing, similar situation to Paul X, it seems. We already looked at this from Los Angeles Gullers. But yeah, there we go. I mean, wow, so many free agents. It's actually kind of insane. If we look on the Breaking Point hub here, actually, just as Chrome's been putting together, if it ever wants to load, like, you can see here on the left-hand side, the amount of free agents is kind of absurd. Like, look at all these recent moves. We've got all these confirmations, so many free agents. It's a crazy, chaotic Rostermania period. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you were new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.